This is another Real Track production. Real Track, real.
I can see straight through the fuckery. Niggas know what's up with me. Yeah. Niggas know not to fuck with me. Real shit, only no fuckery. Thought that bitch wanna fuck on me, so she can go and tell that's that fuckery. If it ain't out there, that's the fuckery. I'm pulling back up with the fuckery. Yeah, bitch ain't no fucking me. You owe me, you ducking me, that is that fuckery. Yeah, stick on me ugly. Bitch ain't no touching me 30 for fuckery. Nah, that is that fuckery. That is that fuckery. Fuckery. Yeah, that is that fuckery. That is that fuckery. Yeah, I can't let you pay me for a pussy. You owe me to pay me or I am a pussy. Yeah, you probably feel lost, huh? But I can't let you feel like it took it. Nope. Not the way you had a nigga looking at my money on my work when I call you play hooky. Yeah. You ain't keep it G. You ain't keep it G, nigga. All you did is try to hit me with the fuckery, nigga. Yeah. Never about to hand and feed niggas. No. I was just trying to feed niggas. Yeah. Cause I was just trying to eat, nigga. But I can't let you think I'm sweet, nigga. Okay. Yeah. I ain't type to look for beef, nigga. Nope. But I ain't looking just to please, nigga. Yeah. Got the pipe on my hip, got some pressure built up. I'm a motherfucker squeezing. Yeah. Now fuck making peace with you. I'll try and make some cheese with you. Yeah, man, I feel like we equal. Pull up, old raggedy vehicle. I'm shooting at whoever be with you. I wouldn't want to be with you. I'ma kill a nigga, smoke weed with you. Same nigga like to be a C with you. 30 round clip for your pussy ass. Then you get the picture. Thought this bitch wanna fuck on me. That ain't gon' happen though. Back in the trap and I'm stacking though. No time to chill with no ratchet hoe. I'll let you on traffic though. No fuckery. Talk back, I smack her though. Tell that hoe pack the coat. Bitch, get your back and go get out the fucking door.
Yo! How is everybody this evening? Good. So, I guess by the title, let's keep it real if we can. This is another stream where I don't want any disparaging remarks. I think that I have exhibited uncharacteristic patience with all of this thing. Thank you, Viper. Thank you very much. Unparalleled patience with this whole situation, but now we're really down to there's some creators that are arguing they're arguing conjecture. Okay, I think that most of us know what conjecture is, but hold on one second. All right, so PG did what PG does last night, and it was all conjecture, right? She's using, let me show you really quick. She is using this AI overview as proof that there was not surveillance footage from Morrison Cemetery. Now, when you're asking yourself about surveillance footage is a very specific type of footage. Surveillance footage definitely puts it in the realm of, well, did the police have any cameras there, right? Otherwise, what you would probably more generally coin it would be security footage, right? So she says Hawkins County investigators did not collect surveillance footage from Morrison Cemetery because there are no cameras at or immediately around that location. Instead, early in the investigation, police gathered footage from personal systems, business, and traffic cameras along nearby roadways like Beach Creek Road and Ben Hill Road to identify vehicles, right? Which this is an AI overview, right? So when you sort of boil it down to how accurate are AI models, it's all in the prompting, right? You certainly can get AI to tell you exactly what you want to hear, or you can prompt it to tell it exactly what you don't want to hear, right? Either way, however, either one suits your need, right? Good evening to everyone. So it says here, AI models give wrong answers anywhere from 9 to 60% of the time, depending on task and platform. For general search queries, Google's AI overviews are accurate about 90% of the time, right? However, for complex tasks like citing specific news sources or evaluating science, models fail and hallucinate up to 60% of the time. So this as well is AI overview, right? So you got to take all AI with a grain of salt, but this is where you're definitely getting into the realm of conjecture, right? This is so once the whole Morrison Cemetery has been searched, once that's dispelled with public proof that a couple of people absolutely wanted to see, they just sort of shift the goalpost. Not here to say that they moved it. Maybe some of you would, that would be your argument, that they moved the goalpost. I don't necessarily, I don't know if it's been moved or if it's just been repositioned, right? But conjecture. Conjecture refers to an opinion, conclusion, or educated guess formed on the basis of incomplete or uncertain evidence. It essentially means speculating or theorizing without absolute proof. Now, what's fundamental, what is just dire for you to understand, that this conjecture is its own strange brand of conjecture, right? And let me tell you why. It's its own strange brand because this conjecture is being weaponized against other people who are stating facts, right? That becomes a very dangerous, this becomes a very dangerous brand of conjecture, right? When you are theorizing and you are passing off an opinion with no formal evidence other than an AI overview, right? And that essentially this has been weaponized in this regard towards Lisa Kay. Lisa Kay says that she's spoken with someone, It would not be impossible. I mean, all Prayer Garden would have to do is to reach out to the proprietor or the groundskeeper at Morrison. Clearly, this has not happened because this is her proof. This is the proof, right? Now, it says here in the AI overview, I've got two pulled up because the desktop summarization is it's different than it's bringing up different topics than the mobile version, right? It says here that there is a discussion regarding the potential use of ground penetrating radar. The crew claims that while some believe the site was scanned, it was never professionally searched underground. Now, when you break apart that like you would a verse in the Bible during Bible study, never professionally searched, is that to suggest that it was searched with GPR by an entity or an individual that was not professional, not certified by the state to interpret the readouts, right? Now, if you've not done any research as to what these readouts look like, okay, these readouts are probably a lot of times less specific than even, let's say, a cardiogram, right? On a cardiogram, you can definitely identify stuff is going on, right? In these scans, right? You can look up ground penetrating radar as it regards to West Mesa in Arizona. That was a serial killer that was involved in taking prostitutes off the street, ending their lives, and then bringing them to the West Mesa and then burying them. What they did was they used ground penetrating radar. It's been used on many cases. They used the ground penetrating radar, but this is not technology that's going to I think people get confused with ground penetrating stuff like they do when the gas man comes to identify where a utility line is, right? That's a whole different thing. This is something that has to be interpreted. It's like it's even less specific than an x-ray. Okay. And we know that the person that administers the x-ray does not give you the readout or does not give you the diagnosis. It has to go over to a doctor or someone certified, trained, to give you the results of, even if it's very obvious, right? An x-ray tech ought never get caught in a situation where they're telling you their opinion. Their job is to take the x-ray and pass it along the road, right? So much the same with the ground penetrating radar. They're going to come and scan, and then they're going to take this readout. They're going to take it back, and they're probably going to blow it up on a big screen. However they interpreted it on whatever other technology. Maybe it has to be entered into a computer interface or a platform associated with the brand of ground penetrating radar. That way it kind of helps you measure and do, blow it in and do all the things that it needs to do, right? So this is all conjecture, okay? This wanting to argue whether or not it was actually radared is just a weaponization of conjecture. The woman can't prove to you in any sort of way that it was or it wasn't. She's just going to tell you it wasn't because maybe someone else has the opinion that it was with no proof. Okay. Now, the other part that I thought was very interesting was that in the summarization over here on the mobile, the word evidence in terms of audio recordings are intended to be played on his or hers and his channels. Now, just the ideal of that alone is absolutely astounding. Okay. Evidence is to be held for evidentiary value. Okay. We are not here, and we are all not so naive to believe that what she would call evidence has been sent to the TBI. It has been ran through whatever they need to run it through to first even identify if it's said suspect, to secure the chain of custody. This isn't stuff that you're going to just play on your YouTube channel. Again, it's the weaponization. It's the holding it over people's heads. They're not holding it over mine. I wish they wouldn't show it. And I guess I'm taking the wrong approach here, because what I should do is, with idiots, you have to use sometimes, an idiot like PG, you have to use sometimes the most stringent type of reverse psychology. If I was on here every 5 minutes or spending hours a day on here begging for her to play it, she never would. But because there's enough people that say, hey, we're logically minded, we understand the way the protocol works, we wish, if you think it's evidence, and I'm guessing if it's in the hands of an idiot, it's probably not evidence. We didn't wait 5 years and 1 month, or almost 2 months, to just find out they have this evidence. If that were the case, that means the whole duration of time that they've had these recordings and not turned them in they've actually done a great disservice to Summer Wells and her investigation, right? We're not going to get caught up in the flashy lights and the sirens and, you know, all of the other things that say, oh, goodness, can we hear it? No, there's a whole way of thinking that goes with that. And what that is if this is not, and of course, when you say you have to turn it in, everyone's always going to say, oh, well, we already turned it in. Well, if you've already, in the event that you've already turned it in, you would certainly wait for the go-ahead. And probably the go-ahead is after the criminal trial, when a conviction is either rendered or not rendered, right? We wouldn't undermine the very important thing in which I tried to speak about the other night, which was preserving the jury pool. Let's imagine for a minute that whomever the suspect is, there's enough evidence to bring them to jail, then bring them to trial, right? Let's say, for the sake of the conversation, that there was no change of venue, so that the trial would be held in its entirety in Hawkins County. What you have is you have a demographic of people. I'm not going to stereotype that demographic, but I think many people could, right? This demographic of people, we know from whether they're friends of Jody Sue's, whether they're friends of Andy Bernard's, whether they're friends of Ziggy's or Fred Hill's or Andy Cotton Simpson, whoever these people are, the social network in web stretches out to be thousands and thousands and thousands of people. So what you encounter is taking away the exacting nature of swift, clean judgment, swift, clean justice, right? We don't want to put the wrong offender in jail because it made for great pollution and contamination playing what we want to call evidence on the internet, right? It made for better content publicly here to contaminate the jury than it would being compartmentalized, kept in a vacuum, and then only used during trial time, right? So thank you, KCK. There is definitely an issue with these things being dangled over the head, right? I also spoke on the exclusivity, is what I'll call it. The exclusivity of searches, right? Searches ought to be exclusive. I think that we see that protocol with law enforcement, right? Maybe on a cellular level in a community like that, it may be hard to completely compartmentalize the fact there's going to be a search somewhere, or maybe it's revealed by the news, but it's typically after they're already on the scene, right? It's not a saying, hey, 3 or 4 weeks from now, we intend on doing something, essentially giving someone 21 to 28 days to maybe make a move, right? Now, I'm not saying that there's anything in Morrison Cemetery, but there sure is a lot of people that want you to believe it is, right? Now, my take on why people are saying, leaning towards this so hard, is that it's low-hanging fruit. It's all good. It's a slippery slope, right? And maybe I'll pin this comment and then I think I've been very clear about it already. Yeah, the news wants to handle the news, but the news isn't always helpful, right? I know, I think I've been pretty clear about the contamination of the jury pool, right? If they've come on here and they're like, you know what, I just hate that Don Wells for, because PG said this about him, or because I heard about this CPS paperwork or this or that. The CPS paperwork would mean nothing in the court of law as it regards if his involvement could be proven. Those two things are separate. They're separate deals, right? We also don't want to lock up Fred Hill because PG doesn't like him. And we don't want to lock up Andy Bernard because PG doesn't like him. And that this coverage by people that don't even live in the locale have contaminated the minds of the people that will certainly get jury summons, right? I don't even know if you could send this thing all the way to Memphis, they would get a real clean shake on it, right? It's almost as yeah. And you look at the influence that TMZ has had on the Nancy Guthrie case. Not a good influence, right? Not a good influence at all. So I don't need to go super far deep into that. I hope you understand. I'll say this. I'll give it one more thing. Must be you've never been a juror. Because if you were a juror on a high-profile case, wouldn't even have to be a high-profile case. The first thing the state and the defense are going to ask you is, have you been exposed to any media concerning this on mainstream television or on YouTube or on TikTok? And if you say you have, you could be excluded immediately, right? Immediately. The second follow-up question typically is if you have been exposed to these materials, can you render an unbiased verdict, right? That's all I got to say about that. If you don't get it, then you don't get it after that. So what it would take, let's move on over here. I do appreciate the fact that Ernie had said that all of his boots on the ground stuff was going to be members only, and Cher did kind of mention last night, like, hey, I hear you're going to put this behind a paywall. And Ernie was like, yes, I am going to put it behind a paywall, and that's to restrict restreamers. Well, then the C Foul guy says, well, if this is all about awareness, why wouldn't you want everyone to restream it? If you're doing the great thing, why do you want to compartmentalize the exposure to it to 1,000 people? Because that's what kind of views you're getting right now. 1,500 would be a lot of views. So you don't actually want a full-on exposure. You want to limit the exposure to people that pay you to see it. That's the very definition of a paywall, right? So he did remove that post. Now, does removing the post mean that he's actually going to remove the ideal from his head? I guess only time tells. It makes me know, never mind, right? Now, when we move over here, okay, this is an interesting portion from last night. I just because no one has been specific about what these permits are or aren't, right? We've heard a lot of talk about permits. Well, I'm going to show you the only permit you need, okay? And it is an extremely difficult permit to get. Almost never will happen unless there's a certain set of criteria, right? So
muscle tissue, skin will deteriorate.
I'll just go on over here. We've heard him talk about permits. There's 3 or 4 or however many he's permits, right? The permit that he's referring to, not by name. I think that it just generically, it sounds good and it kind of pushes out expected D-Day when something's supposed to happen. It pushes it out 3 or 4 weeks when you say, oh, I'm waiting on permits, right? What actually would have to take place is this.
Exhumation.
Exhumation is the formal legal act of digging up or removing a deceased human body or cremated remains from its burial place. This strictly regulated process is also referred to as disinterment. Okay. Depending on the jurisdiction, exhumation typically requires formal permits and court or health department authorization. Here are the primary reasons it takes place, right? So probably most certainly, now that I've brought this to the table, that someone will say, no, it's not an exhumation permit. Well, there's really no other permits you need. If you're going to have a protest, you would need a permit. 9 times out of 10. I don't know about Kingsport, but here you would need a permit, right? So what other, so that would eliminate one permit. Let's say that he knew that he would actually need to have a permit for, and this is just all educational. There's no shade. Like, again, I say it, if Ernie Shell finds her, man, Ernie Shell finds her. I know that there's a lot of people floating in between all of this, and they probably have some questions. And the issue is that unfortunately, Ernie is under a lot of pressure. I can see it. I can hear it. So when Ernie is under this pressure, if he's questioned, a lot of times he'll run right into wanting to have a conflict or the ad hominem, right? He showed it with C Fowles last night. He showed it with Cher. He was questioned on something, and then immediately he goes personal. This is not really what you would expect, right? So exhumation, you would have to have a forensic or part of a criminal investigation. Authorities may order an exhumation to perform a new autopsy, uncover evidence of foul play, or secure DNA for identification, or a family request and relocation. Families often request to have a loved one disinterred, to move them to a new cemetery place them in a dedicated family plot, or to switch from traditional burial to cremation. Archaeological or historical research. I think that sort of, hey, what's up, Matthew? That sort of explains itself, right? So that won't happen, right? Unless this ground penetrating radar actually does show something. Now, since we've brought that to the table, let's talk about what GPR actually looks like. Okay. Now, what you're seeing here is a readout, right? This is the data. This is the output. Okay. They're going to scan it. And then it's going to print out something like this, right? Now, I think that it's pretty clear that this is a paper printout. I know you can get it digital. It's going to work. The output is going to work a lot like medical devices, where you can get a paper readout, you can get a digital readout. The digital readout can be sent remotely to different places. And the paper readout is a physical right there. Now, it's all good. I think that's another reason. I meant to mention this. So Ryan did a video where he said 4 reasons why I think Summer is in Morrison Cemetery, right? Now, no shade on Ryan. I think that at some point there may have been very superficial reasons as to why he thought that. But I think that you can see the proofs in the pudding that he quickly moved on to other search places, right? I couldn't give you a great context as to why. I can reach out to Ryan personally, privately, and ask him these things. But what I think is interesting about it is that Ernie and Ryan, they've really had a what's for on the internet, right? And it's been a crazy disagreement. And a portion of me believes that this Morrison Cemetery thing has been grabbed onto because it would sort of pull Ryan into agreement with it, right? If that makes sense. Okay. If that makes sense, right? It's like you don't have to like someone, but if their argument or their brand of conjecture, if it suits you, then you would ally with them for that reasoning, right? So, this is the GPR interpretation mistakes you're probably making right now. This is actually the wrong one. I brought this up so as people could understand that I've used this terminology, interpretation, right? Now, interpretation also could be used when you're looking at polygraph readouts, right? A lot of times in very serious situations, this data would be made available for more than one person to interpret, right? You kind of want to get a going rate, right? And it's sort of also a scientific way to, track the control group or the control group of interpreters, right? Very rarely are they going to just go on one interpretation for a lot of things, right? They're going to anything where there's something is interpreted. Sorry, it's going to be a group of minds working on it, whether it's a CT scan or it's a polygraph scan, so on and so forth, right? So this readout would most definitely, the scanning would happen, and then this machine would be brought back. I don't want anyone being confused into thinking that as soon as they scan the ground, they're going to see something like this, and they're going to say, oh yeah, we're going to dig right now. It does not work that way. They'll go and scan, and then in the event that the interpretation states that there's a valid reason to dig, now you got to get a warrant. Because in the event that there is a disturbance underground that they find it has a forensic value to the case, right? If it has a forensic value, it has to be recovered in the correct chain of custody, which is going to be a search warrant, a warrant, right? That locks in. There you go. Screenshot. That. Now, I'm not saying that's what it is, but it could be interpreted that way, right? So the scan would happen. The data would be saved on the machine. You're going to take it back to the computer. It's going to be entered into some sort of interface. This interface is going to have, it's going to have measurements. It's going to have zoom options. It's going to have whatever the interface offers, right? And then you're going to start to make an interpretation. Now, this is based on being accredited with the machine and also experience on the job, right? Those two things in tandem, right? So this is the one I wanted to show right here. It's just so people. Now, you may have seen them on CSI. I saw them run one. There's several different kinds of GPR. There's a GPR that you can essentially bore a hole, and this GPR will fit on basically a rope, and that it can be pulled through the ground. You've got the less dynamic version that's just they have small handheld versions. And then you have the big walk behind looking like a lawnmower version. And then there's even a step up from that, right? So there's a lot of different variations in the technology. Mainly all of them work the same, right? They do all work the same. They're shooting frequencies into the ground, and then they're bouncing back. And then the machine, it receives the data as it returns. And then as it moves through things, it's going to create what you see here, right? So whatever is under there, right? It's showing you that there's a disturbance here, whatever they may be. You can see here, there's a disturbance here, right?
Or it could be the base of a.
It could be a lot of things. So moving over here.
We know that our loved ones here, our ancestors are here.
This ground penetrating radar technology is revealing evidence, undisputable proof that crimes were committed.
The remains of 215 children near the former site of a residential school.
The Cowessess First Nation announced the preliminary findings of 751 unmarked graves near a former residential school.
Now, before I move too far into this, let us, where was it at here? Right here.
Do our due diligence. We're not just going to jump in this, okay? We have to have paperwork. We have to file things, permits. We have to have a lot.
But you
So-
did say yesterday you already had people there, though, right? Like in the cemetery?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Perfect.
Okay.
People from Rogersville has already been up there. Yes.
Okay, so Ernie,
So there's the permits. There's the talk about the permits. Outside of a court order or a law enforcement warrant for an exhumation, you would definitely need starting right out with the family's permission, right? You would definitely need some sort of oversight or permission from the grounds, the owner of the cemetery, whether it's some cemeteries, a board runs them, like a perpetual care, right? It's a board that makes decisions. It's not just one person that owns the property and says go, right? I can tell you this. Well, no, I won't tell you this. I'm going to keep that to myself. Maybe at a later date, I will tell you about an experience with the cemetery. Now, here is kind of one of the reasons why I even want to talk about what the GPR does, because there was a little bit of confusion last night with what the GPR does or doesn't do. Okay. And I wanted to sort of clear that up. Again, this is no shade on anyone. This is just correcting things that maybe weren't explained fully. It's so that the people who are watching this, biting their nails, thinking that something's going to happen, which I'm not here to tell you that everything is possible, right? Everything is possible. I'm not going to sit. These are not the days of old where I'm going to sit here and say, you know what, Ernie Shell is this or this or this, or I'll tell you what PG is, and that hasn't changed, right? We know what that is, okay? But anyone that is going, I can't tell you he's not going to go out there, right? I can't tell you that. I'm not going to tell you that. I'm not going to make this a volatile situation where it becomes a toxic competition for things that these people know and that these people don't know, right? It's not that. This is just correcting anything that hasn't been fully explained or correcting misinformation as a whole, right? So at this point, almost 1,800 people have, to some degree, potentially been misled with what GPR actually does. And I want to kind of get what was said and then show you what it actually does. I can give you a generic breakdown, which I've already done, but we're going to get a little more in depth to it, right?
Let's say you're right. And I hope you are. I really just want this done and over with. I'm sick of everybody. You know what I mean? So I hope you're right. I hope she's found and in there. But say you're right. You come across what looks like child remains. And so what do you do from it? What's your next step?
Here's the thing. Law enforcement's going to be there. They'll be there when we do all this.
Okay.
Yeah.
So why? Can I ask a serious question?
Mhm.
If they're going to be there, why do they need you to bring the ground penetrating radar if they have their own, right?
Actually, this was the permits one. Let me step back to this one. This was kind of what it does.
Bones will not by the 5-6 years period. What happens is when they shake the ground, it will make a vibration. If it's a box of any sort with anything in it. Now, if it was an empty box, it would be invisible. That's the way it works.
If it's not in any box.
And that's not actually the case. I'm not sure. Maybe he watched something and interpreted it a certain way. But that's not actually how it works. It's going to show voids and disturbances in the substrate, the subsoil, right? What's under the ground, right? It's going to, with a fairly accurate, you're shooting a frequency into the ground. This frequency is permeating everything. It's going down. Things in the middle of the frequency that bounce back first are going to be the top in your readout. Things that are lower are going to be the lower part of your readout, right? Let's go back here really quick, right? So as you're shooting your ray down, it's hitting the top here, and it's getting back quicker, right? Things on the bottom, the rays hit later, split second later, and then they're back to the machine. And now you can identify a disturbance. If anyone has ever used a fish graph, right? A fish finder, it's much the same. Now, to take it a step further, when I used to ice fish a lot, I would use what's called a Lawrence. It's called a flasher. And what it does is it has a transponder, and a fish finder has a transponder as well. It's in the water. A lot of times it's hooked to the trolling motor or just to the underneath of the boat. And it's doing the same thing. It's sending down a frequency that's hitting things in the water and then bouncing back to the transponder. And then the transponder is hooked to a screen. And then you can get you can get a depth, you can get a fair size, interpretation. We see them used by the guys that, I don't want to say the guy's name, but the people that go look for cars, missing people in cars underwater. They can identify, sometimes they've been able to identify the make and model of the vehicle. It's that same science. This is a little bit different. This is not the consumer's version of it, right? So here we go.
Elders, our survivors, and friends of our survivors have told us stories that knew these burials were here.
It was a part of the TRC hearings. Survivors talked about it. They were not believed. And now we have the proof. This ground penetrating radar has given us evidence. Now
you saw that device?
The proof. This ground.
That device looks like a lawnmower, right? It's scanning the ground. You're scanning the ground, and then you have to go back. You can see there's a screen here. It's scanning the ground, and it's shooting here. There's a wire, a cord. The transponder is down here. It's shooting into the ground, shooting back to the transponder, and then to the screen, right? This screen will give them a sort of a window in to see. But this is definitely going to be taken somewhere, and it's going to be interpreted, especially if you're covering mass ground, right? There's a science to the grid work of it as well, right? They're not just going to run over this whole thing like a lawnmower and then try to interpret all of it. That's not the way it works. What it will do is they'll do a swath, and I'm guessing it's a start and stop. They're going to do a swath and then start another swath, do a swath, start another swath, so that they know reading 1, reading 2, reading 3, so on and so forth, if that makes sense.
Penetrating radar has given us evidence.
Okay, so we're looking for anything like a sewer or an electrical conduit.
We're using a device called ground penetrating radar, or GPR. If an indigenous community wants...
Now, to be a little more specific, when the utility guy comes out, right, they're looking for things that are buried in the ground. It's a different technology. It's still the same ideal, but in like gas lines, they'll run what's called tracer wires. This wire, because gas pipe is typically a PVC, a plastic, you can't find it on a metal detector. It's all heat, everything is heated and fit. It's not like the old cast iron stuff, right? So they'll run what's called a tracer wire in it. Same with sprinkler line, right? A good sprinkler guy is going to run a tracer wire in it. This tracer wire is so that when you go to try to detect the line, there's something of connectivity there, right? Does that make sense? All right, moving forward.
...wanted help locating unmarked graves in Quebec, they'd most likely come to this team.
My name is Adrian Burke. I'm a professor of archaeology in the Department of Anthropology at Université de Montréal. My name is Jean-Christophe Ouellette.
You can kind of see here, he's got a tape measure stretched out, right? So it's not just to turn the machine on and go. There's footwork, there's a design into building a grid that is going to encompass the area in question, right? It's not a haphazard deal, right? It's a very, very strict science, right?
I'm a professional archaeologist at the Department of Anthropology at Université de Montréal.
This kind of looks like a lawnmower, but I know it's not. Maybe you can just explain what I'm actually looking at here.
Yeah, it's a very expensive lawnmower. Essentially, it has an antenna right in here, and that antenna is sending energy waves into the ground. And then you have a counter.
TBI definitely has this. This is not crazy. This isn't hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars equipment, right? It's not. This is definitely something that they would have at their disposal.
The wheel that is essentially counting the exact distance that you're moving. And then the third element that's important is this tablet. And what this tablet does is it essentially is talking to the antenna and it's collecting the data.
So how does GPR see underground?
See, they're running a grid. So it kind of is more proof of concept of the start and stop, right? This thing is not, you're not just going to run over the whole thing. You're doing swaths. You're doing a grid. And you can see him moving the cone. So then they're going to go back and they'll run to the cone again, move the cone down, run to the cone again, so on and so forth.
Basically, it measures the speed at which waves travel through the ground and back to the antenna. When the waves go from one type of soil to another, or when they hit a rock or a hole dug years ago, they change speed.
Now, to elaborate on this,
in a 5-6 years period. What happens is when they shake the ground.
Now, he said he did make a comment about after 5 or 6 years that cadaver detection or DNA, such as soft tissue, ligaments, flesh, muscle, it does go away. But when it's in the soil and it's not, how do I say this without, when it's not being scavenged on and it's not in the weather, you understand that there is bone marrow, right? The bone marrow definitely, you know what I mean? The bone marrow is present. That's what they would use later on down the road if they needed to absolutely identify something in exclusion to a dental report, right? Let's say the dental report it's not a thing, it's not going to be useful, then they could definitely take a DNA sample from the marrow that still remains in the bones and then test that to a family member or even a valid sample of whom they think this is, right?
It will make a vibration if it's a box of any sort with anything in it. Now, if it was an empty box, it would be invisible.
It would not. It would still be a void, and you would see strong evidence of there being a void in the soil, right? It works very much like a fish finder. Let me just pull that up really quick for anyone that isn't aware or can't really conceptualize. Hummingbird is the one that I am. Hummingbird. Let's go here. So now what you're seeing is a profile of the water column, right? You're seeing a profile of the water column as the boat moves over it. So it's imagining that you're in the water and you're looking this way through the water column, right? It appears that this one has some sort of GPS above view looking down. That's more of a global positioning deal. So that's what we're dealing with here. Let me see if I can find one that shows here. This will. You seeing that? So this is either his bait, his lure, or this is a fish. And then this is structuring in there, whether it be weeds, maybe a down tree. Oops, I'm sorry, I'm not showing you. Here we go. This could be a fish. Let me run this back. I'm sorry. I'm a little bit rusty on the screen share here.
I wanted to show you guys a little cool trick here when maybe the guy in the back is fishing, but on this Explorer, just hit the home button. You can go here to views, and I can watch what he's doing up there on that live.
I'm guessing that is probably his bait. But again, you can see a structure down here. This would be the bottom as it lays. This could be weeds. This could be sticks. But it's definitely very, very accurate, right? Moving forward.
Ground. It will make a vibration if it's a box of any sort with anything in it. Now, if it was an empty box, it would be invisible. That's the way it works.
If it's not I think that it's pretty clear that if it was a box, what you would see is you would see evidence of a disturbance that would be in a box shape. It's not going to show you what's inside of it. Kind of the comment that he made is that there's nothing inside of the box, then it would be invisible. Unfortunately, that interpretation just correct, right?
Like
Here's the thing. Don't think that the new sheriff that we've not talked. We got people talking with him right now.
Okay.
That's going to start. This is going to be
moving forward. I'm not going to get caught up in that.
When all that information is plotted out on a grid, it reveals clues about what's under our feet.
Essentially, it's really ideal for looking for what we call anomalies in the ground. You're seeing essentially disturbances in the ground, like somebody excavated a shaft or a trench and then filled it back in. If, for example, in a cemetery, one says that they found with a GPR 250 burials, it's probably that they have 250 burial shafts. And yes, it is entirely possible that there is more than one individual in each of those shafts.
Is there a chance that things can get missed, that you don't see everything?
Yes, you can definitely miss burial shafts because generally the GPR isn't really going to pick up, for example, the actual human remains or even a coffin. And it's actually quite easy to miss those burial shafts. So just because we don't find, for example, burial shafts with the GPR doesn't mean there aren't burials there. And of course,
so I guess with that commentary there, what he's saying is that the science isn't 100%. So with the ideology that someone would be completely sold. Now, I'm not saying she's in the cemetery, but the ideology that someone could be completely sold on the idea that she's not there because the machine didn't pick it up, right? Does that make sense? Yeah, no, fleece. Yeah, visible stuff would be very hard to find. And it's, there it is, right? So even with having the GPR, it's not 100% that if she's there, they'll find her. I think that it's better than not having GPR there. But then we're back to the conjecture of PG wanting you to believe that it hasn't been GPR'd. There's no way that anyone can know that. Now, I'm not here to tell you that there isn't a possibility that they GPR'd it and that, someone that was on the scene or someone that's a jailer at the jail in Hawkins County, maybe he heard about they GPR'd it and he told somebody here or somebody there, but it's conjecture. There is actually no document that's going to be available to the public that's going to tell you, Yay, we did. Nay, we didn't, right? There's nothing available. And I want to be very clear. If someone is telling you at this point in the investigation, if someone is telling you they have documents stating what the police have or haven't done, please do not rush straight to them and say, prove it. I think we're all fairly clear at this point that no one has documents like that. The people that would have documents are people like Fred Hill, who has a readout from a polygraph examination, or potentially Jody Sue, or Andy B. These folks that have been questioned over and over and over, these people would have to have signed a consent beforehand. A lot of times they're going to send you with a copy of your consent for your own record keeping, right? We know that when they came and they took things from the Wells house, they left a seizure report of all of the things that they took: tablets, computers, clothes, picnic basket. You guys remember? They didn't just come in and take the stuff, right? There has to be a very clear chain of custody. Now, when they come, for instance, with the seizures, when they come to the house, and I think on the top of that seizure, it said consented. They're going to give you the opportunity to consent and cooperate with the investigation. In the event you don't consent, well, then they're just going to go to a judge and say, hey, judge, we got no consent. We need these items. And then bam, you're going to get a search warrant in no time, right? Especially in a high profile, time is of the essence situation like Summer Wells, right?
I think it's important to listen to people's stories and their own memories.
So now that you're kind of all done the surveying part, what's the next step?
Well, the next step is to get in the lab or...
Well, there we go, right? The machine only captures the data. It's got a view screen tablet to let you know it's working, essentially, right? Someone that is accredited and proficient, even mildly or extremely proficient in reading what the screen is telling you, they're not going to make a split-second decision about that. They're going to load the machine back up, like I've been saying over and over. They're going to load the machine back up, and they're going to the lab, right? In the lab, they are going to break down. This isn't, are we looking for a gas pipe, or are we looking for a culvert or a sewer pipe? No, we're looking for people, right? This is not something they're going to rush. This is not something that there's, at this point, when you get to the point of looking in the ground, time isn't of the essence, right? When you think someone can be above ground, time is of the essence. When you get to the point where you're determining whether or not the subject you're looking for is underground, because you have strong reason to believe, not because Prayer Garden told you that she's there, right? Because you have valid evidentiary cause to be there, right? You're not going to make a split-second decision in the interpretation. You can clearly see there's two people here. So in this situation, as a subcontractor, these people this is their company. This is what they do. These two guys are going to go back and they're going to put their heads together. And they're going to interpret this either separate and compare the interpretations, or they're going to interpret together, challenging each other in real time as they interpret, right? It's all good. You have to be able, in the true crime community, it's the responsible thing to do is to say, I don't know. And I don't know doesn't mean no, and it doesn't mean yes either, right? To be responsible is to say, if you're going to lend an opinion further than I don't know, is I hope so, right? We can't know if they did or they didn't. There's nothing to suggest that they didn't do it. There's nothing to suggest that they did do it either, right? What we do know is that it was combed through thoroughly. The exact verbiage. The cemetery grounds and the area around it were combed through thoroughly. Now, Was a cadaver dog used there? Because cadaver scent can be picked up within 45 minutes of being deceased. From 45 minutes on, right? Underground, in not being embalmed and preserved, just soft tissue underground, that window is, I don't know how long the window is. You know, there may not be, somewhere you may be able to find that information, but that decay and that decomposition, it remains locked in there, right? So understanding that decomposition, there's gases and there's things the body lets off, those things will escape upward through the ground even, right? It's like when you hear about someone being put in the ocean, they're going to pop back up once they start to decompose. And the area that decomposes first is always the intestines, because they already have bacteria there that are all the time working. So in a very short time, there'll be enough gas in the intestinal cavity to bring them to the surface.
The computer to gather the data, put everything together, and we can also do some corrections with the software and look at the results.
Now, I'll tell you this with certainty. Now, this certainty is just based on common logic and common sense, right? They are not the TBI, Hawkins County, and this is the thing. People can say they're talking to the new sheriff. The new sheriff oversees, what is the sheriff's main job in every county? Does anyone know what the sheriff's main job is? The sheriff's main job is to oversee the jail. He is the official top of the umbrella oversight for anything in the county, but his job is the warden of the jail, right? So that being said, there are the TBI and the FBI involved. Now, I don't know to what degree the FBI is, but they're not telling you to call Hawkins County with tips. They're telling you to still call 1-800-TBI-FIND, right? You're not anywhere going to find somewhere that's going to tell you, hey, call the new sheriff in Hawkins County if you've got tips. That's not the chain of custody. That's not the chain of command. We know historically that when things need to be relayed back, you can call Hawkins County and try to leave a tip. You know what they're going to tell you? You need to call TBI. TBI will then delegate up or downstream. Upstream would be FBI, downstream would be back to Hawkins County, right? That's the way it works. You're not going to see anywhere where Hawkins County is soliciting tips. Only the TBI. So at this point on the ground, it would be a marriage. Of course, if TBI came to Hawkins County, it's just good politics for TBI to reach out and say, hey, Hawkins County, we're coming down there. You want to meet us there? It's those two agencies together, right? Those two agencies are not going to allow a third party to subcontract a fourth party. The fourth party would be the GPR techs. That's not going to happen. If, let's just say in an imperfect world, now we know, I'm pretty sure, I don't know definitively, I think it would be safe to say that Hawkins County does not have GPR. They don't even have body cams. They don't even have a suitable in-car radio situation, right? So it's probably a pretty safe assumption that Hawkins County does not have GPR. Very safe assumption to say that all of TBI that handles the whole district, the whole state, far east, far west, far north, far south, somewhere in between there, they have this affordable technology. Now, I don't know how many units they have, but if they need the unit, they'll get it there, right? Even if, you know, I've heard crazy stories about needing tech on the other side of the state. They only got one. They'll fly it there via helicopter. TBI has helicopters. Would be nothing to get a GPR there, right? Those two agencies are not going to allow a third party being anyone who wants to search clandestine like a YouTuber, they would never give permission to a third party to hire a fourth party to come in and do this work here. Not when they have that, right? And I don't even want to ask Google if they have it. It's safe to assume if they have a helicopter or several helicopters, right? TBI has a lot of tech. They have a lot of machinery. They have a lot of things. It's safe to say that they have a GPR. They're not going to hire out or subcontract from some private donor who wants to pay to have GPR done around one grave. That's not the way that's going to work. Okay. This is going to be kept within a vacuum, compartmentalized the best that they can. Now, anytime you hear on the news, anytime you hear this terminology, a police source says, and you don't see an official spokesman or a detective giving you this information, Ernie Shell has a point. I think that as many, maybe half and half, I don't know what the percentage is, but anytime you hear the terminology, a police source says, a lot of times that is it's always an unofficial statement from police. Whether or not that cop is being paid for that, I think that's kind of 1950s and 60s kind of behavior. I think that just reporters and news agencies, they're just around scenes with the same detectives or the same patrol cops or whatever. Maybe, like in my situation, I got a brother that's a cop, right? If I asked my brother about something and I wasn't going to blab it all over the internet, like, would he tell me? I don't know. But all I'm doing is painting the route in which things could be transmitted. Information could be transmitted, right? I'm not saying that it is between me and my brother, but what I'm saying is in that respect, right? Someone from Beach Creek may have a cousin that's a Hawkins County cop. Maybe they get the skinny and it goes down through the grapevine, right? That's how things would get out without having an official press release, a presser, right? All right, moving forward. We are here.
The screen. So now what we're seeing is a view.
Now, if you go back, you can see
software and look.
My interpretation definitely would that each of these blocks here, you can see, each of these would be a start and stop. So this would be scan A, scan B, or scan 1, scan 2. It's where you get to the end of the grid, you stop the machine, and then you start it to make another swath, right? Each of these being individual ground tests.
The results on the screen. So now what we're seeing is a view from above. You can already see those white dots. Those could be rocks that are not too big. And if we get
now
closer,
as an example of the platform, or the interface, right? This particular brand of GPR uses this interface. You can see that it's got, you can probably start putting dots and stretching lines, and it's going to automatically calculate, and you've got a lot of different options for it to do things, right, on the interface. This is not just, well, I've got it hooked up to my cell phone, right? It doesn't work that way. You put it into here, and all of these tools accumulatively help you reach the most accurate interpretation that you can. Does that make sense?
To the surface, we can already see something that's quite clear and really linear and not too wide. This is probably the pipe we were talking about before. So it's a good example of what we can find with GPR.
As the search for Indigenous children's graves continues, archaeologists want to send a clear message. Ground-penetrating radar is a useful tool, but it is not a replacement for first-hand knowledge.
There you go. What's first-hand knowledge? It would be a confession or an eyewitness, right? That would be firsthand knowledge. That would constitute firsthand knowledge.
We shouldn't require the scientific application of GPR in order to confirm or validate the stories and the experiences and the testimonies of those survivors.
So there it is. there it is. I hope that any or all of this is useful. I just don't want anyone being misled by what someone else's interpretation of. I don't want people to interpret misinformation and think that it's useful because they just don't know, right? Right. I think that it's very important that this not be sensationalized for YouTube views or for personal economics, right? Financial gain, financial gain. All of these things, to a degree, to this point, have been misinterpreted, and so that now I think that with just logical common sense and surface level research, you understand that a lot of things that you may or may have heard recently about ground penetrating radar were wildly misinformed. He a witness to what? He was not home during the day that day. It has been proven that he was at work. In fact, the feds came and talked to his boss. His boss showed him on camera that he was there. He would be only his testimony. He's not a witness. His testimony would be hearsay. Hearsay does not qualify for any type of evidentiary value. If he was there and he witnessed something, yeah. Jody Sue is, in terms of them saying everyone is still a suspect. Well, two things can be right at the same time. Two things can be wrong at the same time. One can be right. One can be wrong. Right. Jody Sue could be definitely a witness. I would say she's a witness and a potential suspect. Right. Now that may not be received well by her, but I'm just speaking in terms of, generalities. So, Andy would not be a witness to anything. Anything Andy knows is only because he heard it from someone else. Even if he heard it from firsthand, firsthand to secondhand is still hearsay. So that's the bulk of it. I don't know, outside of had earned. No, not at all. I think that it's very important because there's a lot of misinformation, and that I'm invested in this from way back. Just because I don't cover it every day does not mean that I don't have an investment. It just means that I'm not going to come here and make it content every day. This isn't what I would coin content. This is correcting misinformation, which is it's more of a public service than anything, right? Yeah, it is. It's all a bunch of conjecture. So much of the summarization on the mobile is addressing conflicts. Let's see here. Much of the live stream is dedicated to addressing conflict with other online creators, specifically Benny Keys and Cher, whom the host accuses of protecting suspects for personal gain or popularity. I don't know how. Well, I mean, I know you've got to be batshit loony to think that. I know in the beginning parts of this, it was crazy for someone to try to understand that you may want to control or think you can control what's being put on the internet. It wouldn't make me the bad guy. Why are they not? Why, when they say personal conflicts for protecting suspects, and protect anyone, right? In fact, there's a gag order still to this day. So you would first have to be mad at the police for protecting statements of potential suspects but that logic does not exist in these people, right? They want to be mad at the person they think they can touch, right? They can scream to the high heavens, oh, well, F the police. There's a gag order. We feel like as the public, we deserve to know. No, you don't, right? Some of the gals or guys here who are a little bit older, you may understand that the way the internet has changed the criminal justice system. Before, you may be completely unaware of a case that's going on in your own county or your own state. If it weren't in the paper and it weren't on the news, you didn't know about it, right? A lot of papers had their own crime section where it would generically talk about arrest or whomever was in trouble with the law, and you would read that. That wasn't necessarily ever reflected on the mainstream news, right? It was just an aforementioned, it was just another place to fill up real estate on a newspaper with things that people wanted to know about, right? So it's all good. I understand why you might feel that way, but at the same time, I've heard, and if anyone's followed this case closely, they've also heard too from the detective and Ronnie Lawson that Andy is not a concern of theirs. Now, that being said, ever in the history of criminal justice has a detective or a sheriff ever said that someone wasn't a concern, but they actually were? Absolutely. And I think that is the main thing, right? To protect the ideology of the cornerstone of criminal justice. The cornerstone is that they understood slippery criminals would get out of trouble. But the ideal is that not one innocent man or innocent woman ever be unjustly incarcerated. That's clean justice, right? Also, the idea that you're innocent until proven guilty, right? That is the main cornerstone. That's what holds up the whole criminal justice system, is that if you operate under the belief that's mandatory, if you operate under the belief that everyone is innocent until proven guilty, they get a clean trial, and that more oftentimes than not, you're putting the right offender in jail, right? And that is a generic blanketed way that they hope logical citizens also will adopt that. We have enough people in the world who have family members who have been in trouble, and maybe they got a bad shake, or maybe they got the right shake, but just through first or second hand involvement with the law, hopefully you adhere to that, right? So that you can blanket the potential jury pool and contamination. You can try to keep that from being a thing if everyone adheres to the idea that you're innocent until proven guilty, right? If you adhere to that, then the opportunity for media to contaminate a potential jury is less and less. But with the birth of the internet and having access to everything right at your fingertips right now, and then AI could even 9 to 60% of the time spit you out the wrong information. Now you got people just believing, and they don't even understand that they can prompt AI to give them a response that they want or don't want. It's all in the prompt, right? AI aims to please you most of the time, right? So yeah, I don't agree with that at all. I think now where they're at is it's sort of a cyber deal, right? Until they can't just keep wandering around the mountains, right? You can't just send out teams to just search aimlessly. You got to have a lead, and where you're going to find the leads is in the cyber world, in the phone data, in the forensic data, right? So, yeah, I mean, I think that's a pretty comprehensive look at the current terrain in terms of GPR, permits for exhuming. All of these things are things that only police are going to handle, right? And the governing agencies, right? I think that we can completely dispel the idea that TBI and Hawkins County are going to allow a third and fourth party into the door to do GP, right? What are they to do, right? Are they just going to come with their machine and then give TBI the printout and let them interpret it, right? It's like even a polygraph. A polygraph has to be done through an accredited polygrapher in order to be used by the state, right? The state doesn't just say, hey, now I can tell you in one instance in the state of Tennessee, I spoke with a polygrapher. His job, he was subcontracted by the state. His job is he met the accreditation protocol and standards that his job was to polygraph every sex offender that was on supervision. A lot of, and it's kind of just widespread throughout the course of your supervision, probation, parole, they will polygraph you to kind of find out where you're at in terms of reoffending or recidivism, right? After conviction, right? They're using it as a tool to try to interpret where you are at for, recidivism. Outside of that, for active cases, everything has to be a state polygrapher. All tech, anything tech has to be done through a state accredited situation, right? They're not going to send DNA to some third party lab that has no history of anything that the state can track in terms of accuracy, right? They're going to only run state, right? They're paid for it. There's already a budget for it, right? So don't believe the hype. You can still wish anyone who is planning a search. I mean, Ryan does drone searches all the time. Ryan does foot searches all the time. These things are not regulated by any oversight by the county or a state bureau, right? Ryan is also very aware that he ought not touch anything if he comes into contact with something, right? It's not his job to carry around a trash bag and throw stuff in it if he finds it. If he finds something, you call the police immediately, you back up, and you keep other people from walking through it if there's 399 other people there, right? That's the way it works, right? They can't stop him from doing that. Something when it comes to digging and there's graves involved, then you run into you run into the laws and the boundaries of exhuming, right? Disinterment. So anyways, that's all I got for tonight. Don't fall into the hype, but wish everyone well. I wish anyone that wants to search. I am certain Ryan's not done searching, right? Ryan will have subsequent searches. I'm sure there's other people that are searching that don't want a pat on the back from the internet, right? They just continue to plug away. So anyways, thank you, Ms. Lila. But they had already made arrest when we knew about the search and digging. Yeah. Just be careful what you listen to. And this is the thing. In this situation, I think that it's equally important to not gas someone up, right? I've seen a few comments about the buddy troll stuff. Do I think there could be buddy trolls around certain individuals that are pressing them? Hey, Casey K, thank you so much for your contribution, Queen. You know it means the world to me. Do I think that there's people that don't really care? They're not invested in this, and that they're just there to gas individuals up in hopes that they can just be entertained, right? You can buy a membership, or you can Cash App, or you can Chime, or you can PayPal someone with the ideology or thinking that, well, I can fund him or her or these people to go out and do something, even if it's something they shouldn't do. We can do anything we want to do. doesn't actually mean, does it mean we should? No. Especially when it comes to preserving evidence, right? Anyways, thank you, KCK. Sunshine, thank you for 2 gems. Mountain Mama, thank you for 500 gems. Thank you for 850 gems. Matt, thanks for 4 gems. Thank you for all the gems. Matt, Bonkers, Asia, Dutchy Girl, thank you for being a member for 3 months. And then, of course, KCK. Just be careful what you latch onto, right? And when it comes to updates, we know who to accept them from. Right? There are no updates coming from anything on social media unless it has a background when it does it, right? Anyways, I love all of y'all individually. Remember, the absence of evidence is not the evidence of absence. Be careful. Have a great night.